Listen, you don't need another rebrand or another logo update. You don't need to hire a graphic designer. What your brand does need is a freaking funeral. I know it sounds super, super dramatic, but don't get me wrong. A lot of the times, I noticed recently, specifically in the coaching industry, a lot of business owners show up as if it is 2019. Listen, it's not the same as it used to be. The industry has changed so many times. There have been multiple different waves of growth opportunities. There have been multiple different things that happened in the world also in the last 6+ years. Marketing in 2019 looked very, very different than it looks like today. What used to work, I'm even gonna go as dramatic as 2014, 2015, when I first started out, and I wasn't even a coach in those days. What worked then, it doesn't work today. And what works today is probably not going to work in 5 years from now. So what you want to do is really reevaluate. Are you still cling on to the strategies that used to work back then? Because I know what you might be thinking, but Jay, I was posting on Facebook 5 years ago, and those images were getting 50, 100, 200 likes. Or maybe you were posting Instagram Reels when they first came out, when it was like 2021, I believe. That's when Reels started rolling out for everybody. I was getting a lot of views. I was getting thousands of views, in fact, when I first just got access to the feature. And now, just a couple of hundred views. You can go look at it from my Instagram account. And you always have to be willing to adapt. And like I've said in a previous episode, nothing is going to stay evergreen. Sure, you can have certain programs and digital courses that are probably forever going to sell if they are backed up by psychology, communication, any kind of skills that are not affected by the algorithms, are not necessarily affected by pandemics, political situations, wars. Those kinds of skills are forever going to be there. But certain skills like social media, Facebook advertising, those kinds of things are always going to be affected. I personally don't believe in having an evergreen Facebook ads course. I personally believe that you need to have either a membership or some sort of cohort, group program, whatever it is. Some people might disagree with me. Some people may say, oh, I have a course and it's successful. Great. How many times have you been updating it? Probably a lot, because I don't know about you, but, and again, I'm not using Facebook ads myself right now. I used to use ads, but every single time I log into the Facebook ad manager, I feel like there's something new, or the setting that I set up a month ago, it doesn't look the same anymore. Even following the Facebook tutorials, click here, go to this button, even from my personal profile, it just doesn't look the same. And I'm like, you guys need to update your things. But anyway, no matter what kind of business that you have in the online coaching industry, you're forever going to have to adapt. And chances are that your brand probably does need a funeral, like I mentioned earlier. And I'm going to share with you a brief look behind the scenes of something that my coach did. It was a couple of months ago, depending on when you listen. It was around, I want to say, springtime. So we had a call in her membership. And I remember when I got the email that said, please wear black. And I was like, are we having a funeral? Like, what is, and I was getting a little worried. And it ended up being one of the best calls we've had. I still remember it, and I'm so thankful I managed to be live there, because we essentially, all of us, let go of our own old identities. We let go of the beliefs that we used to believe, and we kind of brought a lot of shit to the call that we didn't want to accept anymore. And I believe a lot of the brands, including yourself, need to do something like this. You could even do a journaling prompt and write down all the beliefs that you have been holding on to, all the marketing strategies that you have been trying to make work. Because there are other things. There are different ways to make things work. There are different ways to market your business. And this is what this podcast is also about. We are going to be dissecting different marketing strategies. We are going to be talking more about content marketing. Feel free to message me on Instagram and bring on any topics that you would like me to cover in the podcast. I would love to cover anything that you are wanting to listen to. But take a piece of paper and write down all the things that you want to let go. Write down all the things that you no longer want to accept in your life, in your business, in the way you market your business, in the social media content. Maybe there are certain things that you even learned from your old coaches and you do not believe that those things work anymore. Write it all down. And I would even burn that piece of paper if you wanted to be extra dramatic. Write all the stuff that you've been holding on to and burn it down. And that's essentially going to be the funeral. And anything that you or your brand used to believe years ago, because here's the thing, and I love this kind of conversation because you might have posted something in 2021 and we all have those followers that remember things, right? They remember, like, oh, you've said this back then. And you might have a whole different opinion today. You might have a whole different perspective on the same topic today, 4 years later. You have the right to change your opinion. You have the right to change your mind. So, any kind of opinion that you used to hold, you can let go as well. And you're allowed to change your opinion and you're allowed to say, yeah, I used to teach that. I used to believe that strategy. I no longer believe that because I have grown. I've taken 4 years to grow my brand. I've taken 4 years to invest in myself, in my education, anything else, right? And I sometimes look at my old social media content because it pops up on Facebook, right? It pops up in those memories. Hey, this is the thing that you posted 5 years ago. This is the ex that you used to date, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't want to see some of that stuff. And sometimes I see the content and it's very, very, very cringy. And I'm like, yeah, I'm no longer that same person. So you do get to have that kind of funeral for your brand. So you can show up differently. And there are actually a couple of signs that say that you might be clinging on to your old brand. And there are a couple of signs that you are showing up with a dead brand. You are constantly tweaking the colors, the logos, the patterns that you're using. You feel like you always want to change things. And I'm in no way shaming you for this because for a very long time, I felt like changing my brand every single year. Literally, December would come and I would be like, all right, it's time to upgrade my brand colors. It's time to upgrade my website. And now my website, at the time of the recording of this episode, is kind of in shambles. I know I do websites for clients occasionally, but mine is kind of in the state of chaos. But for me, it used to be the norm for so many years. And sure, it's fun to play with colors and everything. It's fun to update the website, at least for me. Like when you know how to do something, or you maybe see a website in a different industry and you just get the inspiration all of a sudden and you're like, ooh, I want to implement this for my website, or I want to try this. Things like that is fine, but every single time you want to change your entire identity, every single time you want to burn everything down and start all over again, it is probably a sign that you need to look deeper into your identity and what are the other things that you're holding on to other than the colors. Another sign, you might be launching the offers that used to work back in the day, but they no longer work the same today. For example, and this is just from my personal observations, what I've tried and tested for myself. I know webinars still work for certain industries because I know there's going to be somebody who's going to come on the podcast and say, no, this is BS. She's lying. The webinars are still working. I'm doing my 2-hour masterclasses and they convert like gangbusters or whatever Americans say. I have had success with webinars and I have had webinars that did not convert. So that's the truth. I've done webinars many, many different times, but I personally don't believe that running a free 90-minute webinar is going to be effective unless you are running paid advertising. And even then, I do know that there are different webinar strategies. There are evergreen webinar strategies. There are strategies where the webinar is very short, like a video sales letter or like a video maybe series. I do know that challenges convert. I've done challenges and I've always sold. I've done free challenges, I've done paid challenges, but certain offers and certain things that just like a self-paced course with no support whatsoever, in my opinion, is not going to be converting as good. On the other hand, digital downloads, people love them today because they can feed that stuff to ChatGPT and they can get a lot more stuff created that way faster. But a lot of the offers are no longer working the same way. Find yourself invisible online, even though you know that you're showing up, you're creating content, but it may not be appealing to more people. So that's another sign that it's time to give your brand a funeral and come up from the ashes like a phoenix. And another sign that you actually might also need a vacation is that you do not feel energized when you're creating content. You don't feel excited. You feel like you're just exhausted every single time you sit down to create content. And I'm saying this as somebody who also has experienced that, despite the fact that I teach content marketing. That's my main specialty. That's what I'm known for. I'm known for blogging. I'm known for being the most consistent person at content marketing ever. And even I have felt, for a certain period of time, I felt quite exhausted by content. So these days, you do have to come up with ways to make it more creative. And if you'd like to listen more about that conversation, let me know on Instagram, DM me, and I'll be more than happy to record a different episode where we can talk about how to make content more fun. Now, let's shift the conversation a little bit to why we cling on to the expired identities. First of all, it's the fear of starting over. Now, I've had my personal brand for over 10 years now. Yes, I've done different businesses. They've all been in the same line of work, but there were still certain things that I did not want to let go. For example, when I hired one of my coaches specifically for social media management, it was 2 years ago, I believe, 2.5 years ago. And one of the things that was included in the coaching program was a custom built graphics for social media and branding, right? A whole, what is it called? Like a brand deck with brand palette, with custom fonts, with the logos, with everything. Now, that brand is so old for me right now. I really shouldn't be using any of it. I sometimes still use the old logo, not the teal one, because I used to have that teal color, kind of similar to Tiffany, but not really. I think that color is actually trademarked from what I remember. I believe it's trademarked. Don't quote me on that. So it's a similar color, but not exactly that. And I really loved that brand deck that I had put together by a graphic designer, but I should no longer be using it. In fact, I don't use pretty much anything from that. I don't use those old fonts. I had to essentially detach from that, but I occasionally do still use that logo. That logo is actually on one of my business cards. That's like a metal NFC tag that I use at in-person events. And I really love it because it was a gift. So I'm like, you know what, that logo is still cool because it is my name. It's not a company name. It's not anything that I no longer use that isn't aligned. It's still my name. But that fear of starting over is scary because we always invest time, energy, sometimes money into building something. So of course, we want to cling on to that for as long as we can, but that's not always a good move. Another reason is attachment to recognition. So you might be recognized by a lot of people for a specific product, for a specific transformation you've offered, for a specific infomercial that you've done maybe. And you probably know a lot of big brands that have really evolved and changed what they do. For example, I really hope that it's okay to mention a name on a podcast, but somebody who I've followed for years is Chalene Johnson, right? And she has built a massive brand, massive audience, and I don't know her entire story, but I do know a couple of things that she's done. First of all, she has done a lot of fitness exercises. I know she used to be with another marketing company. It was IPX 90 or something like this. It was like a whole program, like a 90-day fitness program, I believe. She's done infomercials. She's done courses on outsourcing. She's done digital courses. She's taught Instagram. She has a massive audience. I know she pivoted into something else as well. So, of course, I know for her it was quite scary to pivot into something else because she originally was known by that fitness program, but then she was teaching how to hire virtual assistants and things of that nature, how to get organized in your business. So it was like multiple different things. So fitness and hiring virtual assistants is kind of two different things, right? But you do have to evolve as a brand. So that's the key. People can recognize you for one thing. Sure, that identity is probably still going to stay, even if new people discover you and they don't know about the existence of that version of you that's no longer on the forefront. But there are some people that are still going to remember you as that. But it's okay to evolve and transform. For example, in 2016, I was with an affiliate marketing program and I was certified as a coach there, right? And some people still remember me as their first coach through that program. I still to this day get emails from people saying, "Oh, I still remember you as my first coach. I'm so honored to having worked with you when I was first getting started," and things of that nature. So that identity still lives, but the new people that discover me, they don't know about that part of the journey unless I mention it. And then this is a scary one. You might be subconsciously afraid that your next level won't be accepted. Because here's the thing, this one is quite heavy because you might have been in that comfort zone for a while, right? Let's say, I'm going to use my own example. Maybe you have been a social media freelancer for a while and you're quite comfortable. You might have a couple of clients and you work together, things are good. And then you have that nudge for a while that you feel like you want to do something else. Maybe you want to start mentoring. Maybe you want to go make soap. I don't know, whatever it is, right? So there might be an urge for you to do something. Maybe you want to go back into coaching because that's kind of the urge that I had this year in 2025 after having a couple of conversations and kind of like thinking about what I really want to do for the next year up to 5 years. And I was like, I don't know if I want to manage other companies' social media profiles. I feel like I want to focus more on my personal brand and act more like a consultant with other brands and help people implement, but not necessarily do it for them unless it's a very exciting brand, unless like I have a great opportunity, unless something comes my way that it's like, okay, I'm gonna like roll my sleeves and take a client to work on their social media accounts. And then you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm comfortable right now working with my clients, and it's really scary to go into the unknown, let go of the clients, or even if you like, let's say logistically, you may have, let's say, 5 clients and you may be making decent money and you're like, you're good, but you just don't feel like you want to keep going. But you also don't want to let go of the clients. So you could either let them go and start from scratch, which is not the finest business advice, so don't take me up on this, please. But what you could do also is you could stay in that world and start branching out a little bit. You can start putting out different offers, or you can put out like a coaching package and maybe even offer it to some of your clients, right? If they're in a position where they can manage their social media and they would like you to be more of your consultant. So there's like a lot to unpack here, but I know this one is very, very, very scary. But there's a difference between evolution and reanimation. Reanimation is trying to revive what once worked. Evolution is letting go of the old and creating something more energetically congruent. And you know what else I want to add to this as well is your audience can feel when you're in that identity limbo, when you kind of want to achieve the results that you achieved maybe 5 years ago when things were working differently. But you also want to do this today, but something is just not clicking, something is just not moving. And your audience can really sense that until the moment where you decide, okay, I'm done showing up the old way. I'm ready for maybe mentoring and understanding what works today and how I can adjust my brand, which is why this is by no way a pitch for coaching or anything, but I do personally believe in being in spaces where you can participate in the conversations to know what's happening in your space, in your coaching industry, or in any industry, no matter what industry you're in. So I've always believed in any kind of coaching, mentorship, memberships, being in, I hate the term being in the rooms, but being in virtual rooms where you can talk to other people, talk to peers, talk to people making more money, talk to people who are maybe your potential clients, right? Just piggybacking off of each other, because sometimes it's just you against the world, right? It's just you and your computer. And you think to yourself, what am I supposed to be doing today? And I've recently had those kinds of conversations with some of the people in my coaching mentorship network. And it's been very interesting because you can sit on something pondering for a long time, but until you get into the space where you can talk to somebody more experienced, you're not going to know how to move forward. So I always recommend being in the spaces where you can get feedback and you can figure out what is happening in the market right now, and you can come and ask questions so you can get that clarity. And I know that evolution feels like it's untested. You don't know what you're going to step into. It's kind of like stepping into the ocean for the first time and not knowing if the water is going to be shallow or deep right away. I don't know about you, but I'm always curious every single time I come to a new beach or I come to a new travel destination, and I'm like, I wonder how deep the water is, because essentially you're stepping into the unknown. You're stepping into something where you haven't been before, unless you know, because there are certain places in the world. For example, I've been to El Salvador 4 times, and there are certain beaches where I'm like, oh, I know how the water there is, right? So you're kind of almost like the local. You know that you're supposed to go swim there either before like 12 p.m. or after 5 p.m. and you know how the water is and all those things. With the coaching industry, or every single time you're trying to pivot, it's kind of like stepping into the unknown ocean. Now, I want to give you a couple of practical things that you can implement. I want you to do an identity audit and figure out what feels stale, what feels maybe even fake, what doesn't feel good anymore. What is the kind of piece of content that you're posting and you feel like it's not hitting anymore, like it doesn't hit like it used to 5, 6 years ago? What feels performative? Maybe you have been posting any kind of content online and you feel like it's not really you. I'll use the easiest example, Instagram Reels. I know there have been a lot of people who would point to the screen and dance on video, and if that's fun for you, that's cool, but I don't want you to force something like that to do. I pointed to the screen as well. Is it something that I'm going to do today? Hell no. I only did that in the very beginning just for funsies, if you can call it that way, but I do cringe every single time I see one of those old videos. I'm like, this is not me. This is some other person. I don't claim that energy. No. So what's performative that you don't really vibe with anymore? So again, for me, it's those kinds of things. It's maybe even doing those cheesy transitions or like get ready with me videos. I could probably do like some fun get ready with me videos when I travel or whatnot. But I honestly, I do have a lot of respect for influencers and massive content creators who do this for a living, because I do create content, but I'm more of a marketer than like a content creator slash influencer. I do have a lot of respect for them because it is a lot of freaking work and a lot of freaking editing doing anything like this. So think to yourself, what's performative and what's something that doesn't seem like something you actually enjoy anymore? Another good question to ask yourself, if there was no one who knew you or followed you before, what would I create today? What would you create if, it's going to sound really cheesy, if you knew you couldn't fail? What would you create if you just wanted to do it for your enjoyment? And now I will say this, we're not talking about shit posting, we're not talking about just throwing something at the wall, but how can you create content with your personality infused into it? How can you incorporate maybe even some of your hobbies and make it about your business or make it about your personal brand and just let the world know about who you are? Another thing that I want you to experiment with is create from the now frequency rather than from the past wins or from the old testimonials or from the old mentorship that you got. Even something that I've done for content for years, I would go buy a course or I would go to a conference, and I always have notes. Like I have gazillion different notebooks, right? And I probably wouldn't even look at the notes that I took in 2022. Probably even those are already relevant. I could probably look at them and then create content that's the opposite of those notes. That's something that you could actually play with. But think about what you want to say today. And sometimes you do actually, like I said before, you do want to talk to other people from your industry or even from outside of your industry to get different perspectives. So I'm a content strategist, I'm a coach. So for me, it's very valuable talking to people who are psychologists or therapists or AI consultants or people who are in e-commerce. I like seeing different perspectives because I do know that different things happen in different industries. The other thing that you can also do is rewrite your origin story in alignment with who you've become up to today. Because chances are, let's say you're a coach who's been in the industry for 5 years. You probably have offers, services, you have a website, you might even have a podcast, you might have a YouTube channel, and all these different things. And then maybe you haven't updated your websites for the last 5 years. And your origin story has probably changed as well. You've probably had different results, you've probably had different transformations that needs to be displayed right now. So I want you to also put it on your task list as well and do that. And I also want you to, first of all, stop overthinking the titles and drop the titles that you used to go by. Something really interesting that I find about a lot of coaches, and myself included, we look at our Instagram bio and then I'm like, I feel like I want to change the title. Like the title needs to be searchable, right? We all know that. It needs to be something people can find, but then it needs to be something that clearly communicates who I am. But at the same time, I don't want you to change that title every freaking 2 weeks because that's, as far as I can remember, that's how often you can change that searchable title. So you can't really mess with it too much, right? I kind of wish that Instagram would change it to every 30 days. That probably would lead to less overthinking for people. But I want you to let go of the old titles, the old frameworks, the old strategies that you used to teach. Literally something that I've done with my old course this year. So I launched the course, The Content Empire, in 2020. And it was a great course. It was so much fun teaching it, and a lot of people had amazing results and everything like this. This year, I was kind of doing an overhaul of what that course looked like once I started preparing a different program. And I created brand new frameworks, brand new methodologies, brand new everything, and completely rebuilt the curriculum. And I remember looking at the old one and I'm like, I can't teach a lot of this stuff. Like some of it was actually, yes, evergreen, because my intention with the course originally was to make it evergreen. And then I just went straight into social media management and I retired the course, I think, in 2022. Let go of the old frameworks. Now, unless you have something that's really set in stone and trademark and it still works today, because certain frameworks are forever going to work. But if it's something that's linked to tactics, for example, because tactics and strategies are not the same thing. For example, communication strategy is forever going to be a communication strategy, but a social media DM tactic is going to probably change based on how the platforms change. And I also want you to let go of something that I never thought I would say, is the pressure to stay consistent. Because I know you're always going to hear this from other coaches. You have to stay consistent. You have to stay consistent. The key to success is consistency. And I've said this myself as well. Like that's the reason why I've had success in the industry, is because I've been consistent. But I'm kind of a maniac. I'm okay with showing up daily, even multiple times a day. But I know not everybody is going to be the same way, because I'm single, I don't have kids, so I know my availability is very different compared to somebody who has 3 kids, 5 dogs, 2 needy cats, and a husband, right? So a lot of people probably cannot take advice from me, or they have to take the advice with a grain of salt. But I want you to let go of the pressure to be consistent and define what consistency is going to look like specifically for you, because my consistency can look like daily. Your consistency can be showing up 3 times a week really, really, really well. So I want to end this episode by telling you, hold the funeral for your brand. Let go of all the old beliefs that you have been holding on to, all the old frameworks, strategies, tactics, anything that no longer serves you. Burn that shit down. And that way, you are going to open yourself up to the next up level of your business. Very cheesy ending to the episode.